Hello, it's Dawn Michelle and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about the stuff that I got up to all throughout September of 2024. We'll talk about the decks I worked with, the journals I did, and practices I engaged with. As per usual these days, I'm going to start off with a quick flip through my planner because it helps me remember what I actually did throughout the month. If you want to skip to any portion of this video, there are timestamps below so you can jump around if you'd like. It's busy time around here and I have not completely finished. I haven't even set up for October yet, but that's okay. I just moved boyfriend for a minute. And I have not finished filling out for the last week of September, but that's okay. So jumping in, just a quick look through my September. I had a lot of video game stuff actually going on this month. I won't go into details. Like, it was either Diablo or Baldur's Gate 3. I was finishing games, starting games, maxed out leveled a character, you know, all the exciting things. I do have some journaling stuff in my tarot journals around that because I do use my cards when I game. So you'll see a little bit of that reflected here. I totally forgot to do any sort of memory keeping this first week in September, but like, that's okay. Because I fully made up for it the few mid-weeks of September and I put a ton in here. So a few things that I had going on. This is all game stuff. Besides game stuff, if you're not interested in the game stuff, I'm like so sorry. If you are, go check out my other channel because it's all over there. Lisa and I started a new game. We also started a specifically tabs and tarot game. So it is a game that we are playing with two of our other tarot friends, Krista from Krista Chronicles and Allie from Toe Tarot. And the four of us are playing a game of Baldur's Gate 3 over on my other channel. We are streaming it. And we are using real tarot and real dice in that game. It's just a fun way to really incorporate cards and games and friends and all the things. If you want to come hang out with us, we are streaming that one every other Sunday, mostly. And it's over on my other channel. There'll be a link below for it. Lisa and I started another game because there were some things that happened. We had to put other games on hold. And so we have a little game that we started for in the meantime. As far as reading goes for this week, I finished the book That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon, which I think I mentioned in my loot drop video. Is it's great. It's fantasy. It's kind of like Legends and Lattes with a little bit of smut in it. It's kind of fun. I really enjoyed it. It was a really fun read. And then every Friday night, Kevin and I have been watching old movies. So we're doing like a Friday night throwback thing. I know it's not Thursday, but like we have other things we do on Thursdays. Anyway, every Friday we're watching a old movie. So this Friday we watched The Big Lebowski. So in the next week, you know, I just had random stuff going on, getting together with my kids, you know, again, Kevin and I watching movies. This week we watched Heathers, which was amazing. When did I do the tarot loot drop? This is hilarious. Now I did it here. I don't know why I have a sticker here. Maybe this was when I created the playlist. See, now I don't remember. Sometimes I put things in my planners and I don't remember why I did it. Anyway, that was apparently a note. I'll be honest, this sticker is probably covering up something else. It's probably why it's here. And then I was just like, well, I'll just put the tag in there. That's more likely the case than anything else. I list all of my videos that I create or live streams that I have in the gray, and then I put what it is in here. I did a big chunk on this one because this one I actually did a member live and we just did a hangout with me for like, I think it was about 3 hours. We did some journaling together, we did some tarot, we chatted, like we just hung out. Like it was just kind of like I turned my camera on and just come and hang out with me as I kind of like go about my day, do my thing. And it was a lot of fun. We restarted our Monsters and Mayhem play, again, Baldur's Gate 3 game stuff. So sorry, these are our characters, like sorry, not sorry type of a thing. And then, okay, coming into the last week, I still need to fill this out because I haven't finished recording everything in here, but you know, just kind of going on with the usual thing. I'm actually gearing up to get ready to leave to go out of town. And so it's been a lot of stuff and a lot of stuff I have done. I just haven't checked it off yet. And then we move into this first week of October and I really need to get on to getting my planner set up, but I'm also getting ready to go out of town. So I'm not really too worried about it. Anyway, so that's what I had going on in September. Like, what did I do? I don't even know. I read some books and I played some games and I watched some movies and I did some tarot. Like that's just my everyday life, so to speak. Okay, let's jump into the decks. So just really quickly, I am going to mention these 4 decks yet again. I do feel like a bit of a broken record when I keep mentioning the same decks over and over again every month, but like the whole point of the video is it is the month that I spent and what I did in my tarot practice, and among other things. And so like I have to show you the decks. So the decks that I was using, I was using the Tarot Persephone's Garden. Now this is the new edition. I can't remember the name of it. Has the different backs. So I swapped out from the first edition that I had, and I'm now using this new edition of it. It has some slightly changed cards. I really like the sort of dark undertone to it. It feels more of Persephone as Queen of the Underworld, less Persephone as the Spring Maiden. And like I'm sure as you heard me mention before, I definitely am more of that Queen of the Underworld energy. It's been a long time since I've been a Spring Maiden. So this deck definitely feels like it resonates more with me and where I'm at in my life and what I'm doing with my tarot practice. I really, really love this deck. It's amazing. It's definitely one of my favorites. I like this version just as well, if not maybe even better than the first edition, but they're both great. I have kept it. I have no intention of rehoming the other one. This is just the one that I'm currently using, and I keep these cards set out because like I'm gonna edge it. It's gonna happen someday. Someday I'm gonna edge it. Okay, so that's the Tarot Persephone's Garden. That's the name of it. That is the deck that I'm using for my work in connecting with Persephone. I have been doing daily draws with Persephone and Hades. So the deck that I've been using for my Hades work, as you'll probably know if you've been around here for more than 5 minutes, is my Darkness of Light Tarot. Here's the backs of that. I still need to edge this deck as well. This deck is, like, it's amazing. It is just full-on Hades deck to me. I don't know that I could ever use it for anything else now because I feel like I have so imbued it with Hades energy. That is all I've used it for, and I'm perfectly fine with the deck being like super specific for a very specific purpose in my practice because I do have a fair amount of decks, so I can be really specific with some and really just let them sit in a particular way of being. So this deck for me is my Hades deck. I've talked about it many times. I love it. It is the 4th edition, so it's the beautiful linen cardstock. I had it before. I hated the cardstock. It was like the 1st or 2nd edition. I ended up rehoming it, and then when I realized that this was the deck that I wanted to work with for Hades, I ended up bringing it back in. I was very, very fortunate to be able to get it for a very reasonable price, and very, very big thank you to the person who sold it to me. You know who you are. I absolutely love and adore it. So this is the deck that I've been using for my Hades work, and I'm not gonna, do the whole like pairing thing again because like I've shown that many, many times on my channel. I use these two for connecting with Hades and Persephone. I have dice for each. Again, I've shown those on my channel. They're also in my full dice collection video, I do believe. If not, I definitely showed them last month. In my wrap-up. I also dip in and out of, so I don't always use these for every single reading, but I dip in and out of these two oracle decks relating to Hades and Persephone energy. Let's just put those out of the way for a moment. So the Flower Oracle is the deck that I most often use when I'm looking for an oracle deck that I want to use to connect with Persephone energy. Here's the backs. It's beautiful. I really love the keywords. It's got the 3 keywords down at the bottom. I pull that into work quite often. There's just something about this deck and the way it pairs with the Tarot Persephone's Garden that is just beautiful. I really love working with it. It too kind of like, I feel like I would probably use it for other things, but it definitely sits in Persephone energy for me, and that's probably just because I've used it so much for that. Same with Dante's Inferno, as I'll talk about here in a moment. That's just a Hades deck now, and that's fine, and I can use them with other decks. So unlike these two, where I feel like I would never use those for anything other than work with Persephone and Hades, these decks, these oracle decks, I would use for other types of readings. It's just they resonate very strongly with that kind of energy now, and it's the oracle decks that I most often pull into practice when I'm wanting to work with Hades and Persephone and I want an oracle deck to support each. The Flower Oracle is the one I use for Persephone energy, and then for Hades energy, I use the Dante's Inferno. Now, interestingly enough, with this one, this deck, I really don't ever get into the guidebook very much. It's great. I just really don't need to get into it. With the Dante's Inferno, I almost always get into the guidebook because the key phrases don't really do it for me. but the write-ups in the book are well done, and like it's enough to make me go, okay, I forgive you for not having great keywords, and I'll just get into the guidebook, because the art is really fantastic and it definitely resonates with Hades energy. This is like all about the underworld, in my opinion. But sometimes the key phrases on the deck, they just really don't do a thing for me. So I really do have to rely on the guidebook and the messages in that. Now, I've talked about in many videos how like that usually is a deck deterrent for me. If I have to be reliant on a guidebook for an oracle deck, it usually ends up in a rehome pile because I don't want to be reliant on my guidebooks. I want them to be accessible and available to me if I want to use them, but I don't want to feel like I can't work with the deck if I don't have it. That's not quite the case with this deck, because I feel like if I didn't have the guidebook, I could still work with the key phrases and certainly the imagery, but having the guidebook really helps, and it just really enriches my work with the deck. And because this is a deck that I use for such a specific purpose, like I'm okay with getting into the guidebooks. But really, y'all, I'm just a walking contradiction most of the time. I'll say a thing is like a deal breaker, and then I'll go and do that very thing with another deck. I've said it a million times before, I'm like a moody tarot reader, so it's just whatever makes sense in the moment for me. This deck is great. It really, really resonates with that underworld energy. I do like the imagery. These are my two. This is my Hades collection of Darkness of Light and Dante's Inferno, and then my Persephone, which is Tarot Persephone's Garden and the Flower Oracle. And like these, they just like live in my like at hand basket. So the basket that sits on my desk of the decks that I'm like currently engaged with, these haven't left that basket for several months now, and I really don't see them leaving anytime soon. Okay, so let's talk about a couple other decks that I worked with throughout the month, just for random things or practices or certain types of energies that I was working on cultivating. In these two bags, so there was the thing that happened when I started the month. I was doing some Hades work, like specifically Hades work. I'll show you that journal here in a minute. I did a video with my members talking about it, and I was working with Hades as the Lord, or with his epithet of the Unseen One, I think is what it is. And I was working with that energy. And so I started to dive into the idea of like, what is unseen? What is hidden beneath? And so I pulled out these two decks to work with together. I'll talk about each of them individually here for a moment. This is Tarot of a Secret Forest. I have had this deck before. So I had this along with the other deck by this creator that I can't remember the name of it, but it's a similar sort of fairy style deck, and it like highlights the light side of things, I think. And I had that, and I trimmed that, and I trimmed this down to just be the artwork, and I took the titles off and everything. And then as per usual, like I rehomed it, and then I decided I wanted it back because I wanted to do some different work with it, but I wanted the titles on it. So I bought another copy, left the titles on. I did edge it though, like I edged it in black. Anyway, this deck is really cool. I do have a whole video about how I've worked with this deck. I do believe it's an older video, but I think it still probably applies because I still pretty much work with it in the same way. This deck to me is like what is beneath, what's unseen, what's in the brambles, the undergrowth. And I just like, I absolutely love this deck. The moodiness of it. Generally, I turn half the deck the other way because, as you can see, the backs aren't actually backs. They are like these raw illustrations of what's on the front of the card. So you can see there. So I usually, when I work with this deck, turn it halfway, like turn half the deck, and then I'll shuffle it together so that I get some cards that are black and white and some cards that are the full color. And how I work with them, you know, depends on which one came up. The black and white side seems like, to me, feels like it's the primal, raw, the like very wild essence of the card. And then this is kind of like the more refined, taking what's in the undergrowth, what's in the brambles and underneath, and bringing it into the light. This time, because of the work that I was doing with it, I didn't flip it around, so I just kept it with the colored side face up, and that was how I worked with it. I'll show you how it works with the fairies here in a minute. The other deck that I worked with in alignment with this energy is the Brian Froud Fairies Oracle. I have edged this one as well. Both of these are mass market decks, so they're both still readily available. I really enjoy this deck. It's not my favorite of the Brian Froud fairies decks. The Heart of Fairies is actually my favorite one, but that really didn't sit in alignment with the work that I was doing for this unseen energy, because that deck to me has a totally different energy and I work with it in a different way. What I did with this one was I pulled one of these fairies as a guide, and then it led me to what was unseen beneath, and I used the Tower of the Secret Forest to flesh out that message. And so I did this. There's only one actually recorded in my tarot journal because it's just enough to remind me that I did this practice. And it was kind of like the main one, the first one that I started with. But I continued to do this work periodically throughout the month, where I would just shuffle, pull a fairy from the Brian Froud fairies, and then pull my tarot around it to get a message from that fairy, leading me to what was underneath, what I currently wasn't seeing or acknowledging. And I didn't really record those ones because on the whole, those were more in the moment things. It was more about what am I not seeing in this moment. So it's not something that I necessarily need to like record so that I could go back and look at it years later. It was just something that I wanted to tap into for the moment to see what am I not seeing right now? What's existing beneath that I'm not paying attention to that I need to. And it worked really beautifully for that. I did this reading many times. So with these readings, I always pull just a single fairy. I did get into the guidebook for this because I really don't know these fae, and I really have to get into the guidebook to get a sense of who they are and what kind of message they're trying to bring to me. As far as the tarot, I sometimes did 3 cards like this. Sometimes I had 3 tarot, sometimes I had 4 tarot. It just kind of depended on what I felt like in the moment. But these two together were just an amazing powerhouse. And I feel like a lot of the decks that I worked with in my like personal practice, just for trying to, navigate my day, navigate my world, navigate my life in a sense, they were all real powerhouses this month. So that was really interesting. I really love these two together. Again, the Fae, the Brian Froud fairies really serve as the guide for the reading. So again, I would have to get into the guidebook because for most of the time I can't read the titles anyway. Like, I'll be honest, the font's really bad. I can't read it. So I would have to get in to know who's even on the card, and then to read the message in the guidebook to give me a better sense of which Fae is stepping forward for me. And then again, working with the Tower of the Secret Forest to see what their message was and what they were trying to get me to see that I currently wasn't seeing. So if we have this Fae here, again, I would have to get in the guidebook to see who it was and what they stood for, and then looking at this 2 of coins and this Knight of coins to see that is the message, that is what I'm currently not seeing that I need to bring into my awareness in this moment. So while I did journal one of them, the first one that I did to kind of get me into this practice, it is definitely a draw and a practice that I continued quite frequently throughout the month, just pulling a Fae to see who's guiding me in this moment, and then again the Tower of the Secret Forest to show me what I'm not currently seeing. And I worked in it very specifically in that way. I was always coming at these readings from the lens of, I'm not aware of this right now, but I need to be. So this reading, these cards help me become aware of that. And it was a very in the moment thing. So it might be, this is what I need to know right now for this 5 minutes. This is maybe what I need to know that I'm not seeing for today. So they weren't long lasting, long term sort of readings. They were just in the moment to help me really bring some awareness and some intention into my day. And I really, really enjoyed it. It's definitely a practice I will be doing again. These 2 decks, I paired the Fairies Oracle with a lot of different decks, but I really, really like these paired together. I think they work really well. It feels like I'm stepping into their world and they're allowing me to walk through it, and they're guiding me through this process. So it was really, really beautiful. So the other little pairing of decks that I worked with really just toward the end of the month, because this actually didn't even occur to me toward the end of the month, is working with the Night Sun Tarot here. This is a mass market tarot deck. And then I've paired it with the Outgrow Yourself Tarot and Oracle. This is an indie deck. Now, this deck, again, like I said, it's Tarot and Oracle, but I definitely used it like an Oracle deck. And for the most part, I ignored the Tarot Associations because I had the Tarot Associations coming through the Night Sun Tarot. So let me just talk about each of these real quickly. Like I said, the Tarot Outgrow Yourself is a Thoth-based tarot, which is really great. And if you are wanting to learn Thoth, having the keywords on it, I think is really, really cool. I really enjoy that. It's got a key phrase, kind of gives you an idea of what that card's speaking to in terms of the energy and what it might represent. But for the way that I was working with it this month, which I'll be honest is the way I work with it most of the time, was as an oracle. I may glance at the tarot associations, but I really didn't pay that close of attention to them, and it really didn't factor into my readings. What I keyed into was the artwork and then the phrase that's on the card. So like this one says, "Are you wasting your time? Don't forget to water your plants. How do I start valuing myself?" And I think the messages on this deck are really, really fantastic. I really enjoy working with it. I do believe I have a video showing how I worked with it. I think Lisa and I did this as a collab video together. And then I worked with the Night Sung Tarot. Now, this is a deck that I've mentioned before because I've used it before. I bought it thinking that maybe it might be a good Hades deck before I had the Darkness of Light. And I do think it would be a good Hades deck. Darkness of Light is currently out of print. And if you can't get a hold of that one and you're looking for a deck that resonates with Hades energy, I feel like this is actually a good fit. I would also recommend the Heaven and Earth. I feel like that's another good fit. Anyway, so that's why I purchased this one, and I was playing with it. I really, really love this deck. It is so moody. It has such a great energy to it, and the way it reads is like, there's such depth to the way it reads, and I really, really enjoy it. But I actually pulled this one back out because Lisa and I were in game. In one of our games, we do use tarot, and I was trying to find a tarot deck to work with, to use for the character that I was playing. Wasn't my personal character, it was the companion that was running alongside my character, and he needed a deck. And the funny thing was, before we'd started, I put this deck out on my desk, and I was like, maybe this might work. And it didn't work until I respec'd him, and then it worked beautifully. And the whole time that I was playing with the deck in-game, I was just absolutely loving all the imagery that I was getting. I was loving all the cards. It was really fun to use in-game. But then once it was out on my table, like, I just kept coming back to it. I kept feeling drawn to work with it. There was something about the moody energy to it, the depth to it, that just kept calling to me. And so I ended up pulling out the Outgrow Yourself to pair with it so that I could really dive into like what was calling to me about this deck. What did I need to know? Why was I feeling the need to work with it? So it was really interesting when I put them together, because I feel like the Outgrow Yourself has a very feminine energy to it, and the Night Sung Tarot to me has a very masculine feel, and it's very they're both very moody. They both have like a lot of depth to them. There's a lot of layers to them, and I really enjoy working with them together. It felt like a beautiful blending of those two energies. I was using the Outgrow Yourself as an oracle, as I tend to do, with that center message, really specifically just focusing on the message that's in the center of the card, and then using the tarot to expand upon that as I normally do. And there is just something about the way that these two decks work together that even with just 3 cards, I was getting so much depth and detail, and it just like, it sunk to these really, really deep layers. And it's really interesting because it does feel like in a way that it kind of sits in alignment with that Hades Persephone energy. And I realized that that's kind of coming through, that Persephone energy of going down into the depths, the descent into, you know, the dark underworld spaces where Hades exists. I was still getting that energy through these 2 decks as well. So it really made me come to realize that that energy shows up in more ways than I think it does. And it comes through decks and readings and work even when I'm not intentionally setting out to do Hades and Persephone work. This is really just, it's about the descent, right? It's about the journey into self, becoming, you know, self-sovereign, stepping into your own right as a being, as a person. And I really like that the Night Sung Tarot has this really dark, moody energy to it, but there is that light too. There is that light that comes through, that like sun, you know, it's the eclipse energy, right? It comes through, like, you know, it's just on the other side of that, and it just worked really well together. You know, here's me like having a felt experience with a deck and trying to articulate it, and I'm just really bad at it. But I love these together, and there was a lot of times that the colors I would pick up on the colors across the cards. Shapes was also a really big thing that would come through, certain types of shapes coming through, triangles or circles or squares, and there's definitely something that you can lean into with that. Also the arrangement of things on the cards. There was just so much to dive into with these two decks, just using 3 cards. And I love that when I can go that deep and get that personal in a sense with just 3 cards. And it just proves to me that I don't necessarily need to do the whole shebang. Like, right, I don't need a huge, you know, 20 card reading and all the dice and all the different decks. Like, I like that. I enjoy that. But this is a reminder that I don't need that. I can just sit with a couple of cards and get a very deep and profound message. And this was just a really beautiful one. I really, really enjoyed it. It surprised me how well these two work together. I just kind of threw them down on a whim and was like, I'm just going to give it a try, because I just felt like there was something there. I felt like they would converse really well, and I think they do. I think they're beautiful. And I really like the Night Sun Tarot. I feel like it's an underrated tarot deck. I really, really enjoy it. It's readily available. It's mass market. And I think it's amazing. I feel like everybody should have it. So anyway, this was a great pairing. And it was so interesting to see that sort of Hades and Persephone energy coming through these cards, even though that was not my intention when I sat down to work with it. I just wanted to see where the depth was and what was calling me in this little pairing, and just explore that in detail. And it was fantastic. Okay, so before we move on to my fellowship stuff, I'm gonna just pause for a minute here and flip through my journal. It's not really a tarot, it is a tarot journal, but it's not a tarot journal because I put whatever floats my boat in the moment in here. And I did some crazy stuff in September as per usual. This journal has gone through multiple different types of work, and like, well, it's just whatever it needs to be in the moment. That's where we're at. And I really like that, having that. So here was my September cover page with my decks that I worked with, all decks that we've looked at. So the one thing that I did kind of unique to this month is that I actually recorded my Hades and Persephone daily card draws. So every day I drew a card from Hades and Persephone as a message from those deity or that embodied energy. And I used, of course, my 2 related decks. So I put those in here every single day, what my card pull was, and just a brief little message, like what my takeaway message is. So here was like the first week of my readings. And you'll see that I kind of interspersed this between everything else that I was doing. This was a fun, just kind of art crafty project that I did. This is my character from Diablo. Her name is Nemesis. She's a blood surge necromancer, and she hit 100 this month, which is the top level currently. So like, it was a big deal. Anyway, I tend to pull cards when we play as well, just for fun for Kevin and I. Generally, I use my Diablo tarot because I'm playing Diablo. But when she hit 100, I actually paused and I did a little reading, and I pulled a card from the Death Doula Oracle. I don't know why, just in that moment, that was the deck that I felt called to pull a card from to kind of commemorate this hitting 100 on this character, this achievement of everything that we've accomplished to get there. And I pulled the Beauty and Death card, and that was just amazing. It was so spot on. I wrote a little bit, this is a piece of vellum that I just tipped into my journal. I wrote a little bit about the card from the guidebook, and then my own reflections on what this kind of meant to me to be able to get a character to 100. Is it a silly, superficial thing? Probably, right? But this is also something that Kevin and I do together, and it's there's more to it than that, right? I've played all of the Diablos, and there's all of this personal stuff that's roped into that. So I commemorated it with a tarot reading and put it in my journal. Then we're back to my daily card pulls for my Hades and Persephone readings. This is my least favorite one of all the spreads that I did. I was just trying out different formats just to see what I thought, what I liked. This was the first reading that I did with the Secret Forest and the Fairies Oracle. This I did on camera with my members during our live. I just journaled it. We did it, hung out. We just hung out while I journaled. It's really what it was. Hung out and chat. Anyway, I did this one in here, so I've got this in here. Again, like I said, That's a practice that I returned to again and again, but this was the first one to kind of getting me into that space of doing that work, which I really enjoyed. This was my next week of Hades and Persephone readings. I think this one's cool. I don't mind the way it turned out. I think I repeated the same process, so like it wasn't too bad. And then this was the first reading that I did with the Night Song and the Outgrow Yourself. This was where I kind of got into doing this work. Again, I just really picked it up towards the end of the month, so I didn't do a ton with it, but I did quite a few small readings, and just really working with that energy and looking where that depth lies. And then this is the last week, the final week of September, working with my Hades and Persephone, my daily card draws. And then at the end of the month, I did, as you can see, a quite large Hades and Persephone dice casting. So I pulled for every position, I pulled a Hades and Persephone card. I also rolled dice for every single card using the dice casting system that Lisa and I created. So I basically kind of do it twice. I do it from the lens of Persephone and from the lens of Hades. And I've just got my notes in here of what the reading was about, what cards I pulled, what numbers I got. And I've just got that in here as a kind of a wrap up for the month. So this is kind of like what I gained throughout this experience of working with these two decks and drawing those daily cards. So that was really fun. It was really great. It was a fantastic message, really, and I really enjoyed the whole process of doing the daily card pulls with them all month long, and then kind of like bringing it to a close here with this final dice casting reading. And that's it. Then we're ready to move into whatever it is I'm going to end up putting in here in October. So real quick before we move on to fellowship stuff, I did just mention quickly that I am was working on a Hades specific work this month. So this is the book that I am currently reading. I'm bouncing back between this and a couple of Persephone books. I haven't really narrowed on the one Persephone book that I really want to study. I'm kind of dipping in and out of both of them. I'm annotating in here in the book as I read, and then I'm also making notes and doing readings in here. This is my Hades and Persephone like study / tarot journal, I guess. I do believe I did one of these pages with my members too. So I've got notes in here from the book that I'm reading, things that's come up of interest. This is a bit of devotion work as well, because as I'm paper crafting, for me, that is an act of devotion. It's an act of reverence. And then I have this big spread that I did on camera with my members in a sort of journal with me. And then I'm going to be moving into adding my Persephone work. So what I'm doing is basically reading a chapter of each, and then noting any reflections, any notes, and then I'm doing a tarot reading at the end of each chapter to really help me to personally make that connection to the work. So I started with the Hades. I'm going to move into Persephone next month and do a chapter there, and I'll probably just bounce back and forth like that for the foreseeable future. Now let's get into all of my fellowship stuff. So this is the decks, dice, journals, all the things that I use for the guided tarot adventure that I am offering through my membership throughout this year. So in September, we came out of the portal that we had traversed through in August, and we came upon a forest. Within this forest, there was a little goblin. Some shenanigans ensued, and we had a little adventure throughout this forest as we're trying to make our way through the larger, grander adventure. So for this month, okay, I had fully intended to use my goblins and gardens like at the beginning of the year when I like wrote the whole, well, I guess that was technically last year, but when I wrote the whole adventure for the year, I was like just sure that the month that we were going to come across the goblin, I mean, the month is called the Forest Goblin, and I was just sure that this would be the month that I would use my Gardens and Goblins tarot. Then the Steampunk Fairy tarot happened, and I opened this. So every month I do a coffee and cards with my members where I basically, it's kind of like a first impressions deck haul. Like I just go through everything that I have received from one month to the next, and like be it books or decks or whatever, and we just open them all together, and it's a big thing. Anyway, I opened this one up and I was like, as I was looking through it, here's the backs, which are amazing. I cannot wait to edge this deck. Can't wait to edge it. As I was looking through it, I was like, this might be good for the goblin month, going into the forest. And I was just kind of smitten with the art when I first looked through it. So I just really wanted to use it. And even though I had planned to use my Gardens and Goblins, which would have been a perfect deck for that month, I ended up pulling this one out instead and using it. And I'm so glad I did because I really, really enjoyed it. I'll be honest, I haven't even looked at the guidebook. Haven't even looked at it. It's an RWS deck. I don't really need the guidebook. The art is charming, and I don't have a problem working with it at all. I love the messages that I got from it. It's very fun. It's a little bit cheeky. There are little hints of shadow in there too, which I really quite enjoy. It was such a treat to play with, such a treat. I really had a good time with it. I did some other readings with it as well. Like I didn't just use it for Fellowship. My Fellowship decks sit out, so I do tend to get into them here and there for other readings. And the deck I ended up pairing it with primarily. So we have certain things that we use certain decks for, which you probably heard me mention before. I do tend to have like one main tarot and one main oracle that I use. And then I have other decks for things like our lute and our companion. And I'll show you those in a moment. The main oracle deck that I paired it with, I think this is like Wild Wisdom of the Fairy or something like this. This is the out of print version. So while this deck is available on that like new beautiful Blue Angel cardstock, it has totally different backs and it does not have a border. And I've edged mine in like a matte gold. And I hunted to get this specific version. And once I got this specific version, because I wanted it with the backs and I wanted it with the borders, I know, I cut borders off. Like, y'all, make it make sense in my brain. I don't know. Sometimes borders just really work for me. There's something about this deck with the backs and the borders that I am just all about. It has all the autumnal feel, and I just absolutely adore it. I think that for whatever reason, this deck is better with borders. It just, I don't know. I just feel like this is the way the deck is meant to be. And even though some of the cards, like, it doesn't make sense because, like, this doesn't match. Some of the cards don't match. I mean, some of the cards just match so beautifully. Like, look at that. And some of them don't. But, you know, like, I don't know, man, it just works. And I just absolutely love it this way. I apologize because this particular version is out of print. It can be difficult to find and it can be spendy. I probably paid more for this than I should have, but I really, really wanted it. So I have no excuses for my behavior. I love it. I've actually paired this deck with quite a few different decks, but I really enjoyed playing it with the Steampunk Fairy Tarot. These were beautiful together. There's occasionally the cards would come up and they're like the bright purple or whatever that it just like kind of takes you a little bit out of it. But for the most part, I really enjoyed this pairing. I just think they worked beautifully together. It's like just even more of that fairy energy coming through. And I feel like this particular version of this fairy deck really pulls in that autumnal energy, and I was definitely feeling that. Like, I'm really ready for that. I was ready for the hot days of summer to go away, ready for the cool fall time, and this deck just kind of gave me all those feels. And these two together, in terms of just using them for the Fellowship, were great. I used them as this is kind of like anytime I needed any sort of focus point, or occasionally we were like doing little like hide and seek type games. I would use this and then I would pair it with the tarot, and the tarot was my main deck, my main working deck for working through things. And I just used the oracle as like a supplement anytime I needed that additional energy. But like, look how beautiful they are together. I really love it. I do end up, you know, pulling into the text on the cards. I work very heavily with the imagery in this deck though. The imagery more so than the messaging, I think. And I really get a lot out of the imagery, but I did pull in the keywords. The titles do nothing for me. Like, I'll be honest, like they're kind of pointless. I write them down in my journal, but they're kind of pointless. Really what I tie into is whatever the key phrase or the keywords are at the bottom of the deck. And sometimes it's keywords and sometimes it's a key phrase. And normally that would bug me because like there's not a ton of consistency. But for whatever reason, it really works in this deck and I just really enjoy it. Or maybe it's because it is like a fairy deck. So like it isn't going to conform and like that's totally fine. I just let it not conform and I'm okay with that. So anyway, I really love these two together. I had such a great time working with them together. So I'm just gonna put these two up here because like, look at, even their backs are cute together. Even the backs are cute together. Okay, so in addition to those two decks, I also worked with the Field Guide to Garden Dragons, which is a deck I've used a couple of times now in the Fellowship because it works so well for so many different things. Here's the backs. I absolutely love it. It's just the most adorable little deck. I use this for both my companion and my pet. So we have in our little adventure, if you so choose, there are like companions that you can add to your party, like your adventuring party. And they offer you support, or 9 times out of 10, your pet actually is more of a distraction and kind of represents things that are like challenging you at the moment, whereas your companion more represents the things that are kind of aiding and supporting you. So I use the Garden Dragons to represent both, and I would just pull one for each. So I'd pull a card for my companion, and I would pull a card for my pet to see whatever was, you know, whatever the prompt was, to see where those energies sat in the reading. And I just really enjoy this deck. It's so great. It's beautiful with this little steampunk fairy tarot. They go beautifully together. Like, let's just flip through a couple. We'll just do this. Not quite so much with the organization today, but we're here, we're doing it. So I'll just show you them together because like they actually are super cute together. I really enjoy these as well. Like I said, I used them for my pet and my companion, so they were like added at the, you know, the end of the reading, or the end of the encounter, or mixed into the encounter in some way, shape, or form. They weren't really a focal point like I'm showing here, but if you just want to work with your tarot and oracle together, these two decks together are also amazing. I really enjoyed them. The Garden Dragons is a mass market oracle, still readily available as far as I know. And like, they're so cute together. I also love the single keyword. Like, the single keyword is amazing. I mean, y'all know I love my 3 keywords because then like I can do even more with it. But the single keyword is fantastic. The Asparagus Dragon with consistent between the 4 of Cups and the Devil. I mean, it's amazing. They're super cute together. I really love this deck. It's so cute. Okay, we'll just do one more. The Artichoke Dragon with Guarded between the King of Wands and the Ace of Pentacles. Okay, so that was my tarot, my oracle, my companion, and my pet deck. And then for my loot deck, I actually used my own deck. I know, shocker. This is my Finders Keepers, and this is the Pocket Edition. And this is just a collage deck that I created over the course of many years. I think I have videos actually creating some of these decks from way back. Here's the backs. And I pulled this as my loot, and then I just used whatever keyword was on the card for my loot message. And it's great. I mean, some of them work better than others with what I had going on here in terms of like the theme or the coloration or things like that. But I really enjoy this one. It's quite versatile for me. This is another one that I like to just like, I'll pull out and I'll pull a card and then I'll see what decks want to pair with it. Like if something comes to mind as soon as I pull out a card, then like this, maybe a Danielle Noel deck. I mean, this, I don't know, Goddess of the Night, like just whatever comes to mind. This one, Somnia. So I love using this deck. I have this one and I have the larger version, kind of full size. It's this size, tarot or oracle size, and like if I'm using it as a focal point, I tend to use that one. But for a loot deck, just for a wrap up kind of message at the end of a reading, this was the deck that I used. I used the little pocket one. So it worked really well. I really enjoyed it. Like I kind of forget to use my own decks sometimes, which sounds ridiculous, but like honestly it happens because I have a lot of decks. So mine sometimes get put on the back burner because like I know what mine's about. I want to try someone else's. So real quick, just looking at the dice that I use. This is my Fellowship dice box. I have my stones in here, my dice. Normally I have 2 sets of dice. These are my guardian dice, these are my companion dice. And normally I have 2 sets of dice that I use for practice. And this month I only used this one because I don't know, this set just felt like it worked really well. It's like this teal brown, I don't know, it just felt like it went really well with the decks that I was using. So I have those in here. I have my Fate Changer coin, my Sending Stone, all the good things. I keep them all in here, and then I roll, of course, in here unless I'm actually doing casting over the top. But that's my Fellowship dice box. Not too much to share with you in there this this month. So getting into my fellowship journal, this journal and my main journal, they're journals by Creepy Moon. There'll be a link below. I have been using this one all year long, and I think it's going to be close, but I think I'm going to be able to make it. And it would be so awesome to have the whole adventure in this one journal. I'm hoping I can make that work. So this was chapter 9, or September's quest, and it was the Forest Goblin. And as I've mentioned every time I show this journal, like, I don't put any card things in here. I am rewriting the entire narrative in first person. I provide a PDF that has the entire narrative in it so you can follow along in the adventure. It's written in third person. I just rewrite it in first person so it sounds like it's my journal, right? My adventure diary that I'm keeping. I do my initiative, my encounter, and then I pull my loot, and I just note what all of those are in here as I'm working through the process. Again, keeping that story going so that hopefully everything flows together and I know exactly what I was doing, what all of these things are for. So it was just a great fun month. I copied Krista and did stickers in the middle this time because I just thought that was fun. I saw her do that in a video and I was like, copycat, I'm gonna do that too. It looks cute. Anyway, I enjoy keeping it. I keep the format pretty much the same month after month so that it does hopefully look like one overall book, one overall adventure. And I really enjoy doing this. I have little shape stamps. They are just like basic geometry shape stamps, I think, that I use to indicate dice. Not all of the dice shapes are represented in this stamp. I'm hoping to eventually find a stamp that has the 7 shapes of the 7 D&D dice I use. But for now, I just make do with those. So that was the 4 weeks that we did of the Forest Goblin, just getting into that particular encounter and getting our stone, and we're getting ready to now in October head in to see The Witch in the Woods, and that one's going to be a really, really fun one. So just a quick note before we move on, the stickers that I used in my journal this month, I don't often have like a singular place that I pull stickers from, but I did this time, so I thought I would share it. This is the Forest, Fairies, and Fungi sticker anthology. There are a ton of these now. I have several of them. And they're just basically sticker books. They have really nice stickers. This one has mostly white around the edges, or like a cream color, which I love. Some of the other ones have they have a blue tinge or a purple tinge or whatever. And it makes it really hard to work into, like, design-wise into other things. But I really enjoy the sticker book. I haven't used any of the animal ones yet. There is basically, there's some extra stuff in the back. But overall, there is fairies in here. So there's a bunch of fairy stickers. And then there's some animals. So birds, bunch of birds, animals, mushrooms, more. Here's the animal section. Everything's sectioned off so you can kind of see. And then there's like botanicals and flowers and stuff in the front. And that's mostly what I used. But just in case anybody's ever wondering, I do try to share my sticker resources when I have them. But a lot of times I'm just pulling stickers from random places that I've collected over the years. So, but this one I did actually have a whole collection that I used in my fellowship journal. And I really enjoyed it. It was really great to just have this one book to kind of like thumb through. And the stickers are beautiful. So there we have it. That is a look at basically what I got up to all throughout the month of September, the decks that I worked with, the practices I engaged with, a little bit about my planner, and all of the good things. As always, you'll find links for everything I've shown here in the description box of this video. I hope that you had a wonderful September, and I wish you many blessings moving into October.